Hey guys, this is Gabe Dimmick from the Baseball Rebellion, and today I'm going to break down Trevor Story. So I've got a few of his home run swings loaded up here, and we're going to talk about what's allowed him to be so successful this early in the season. I think he's hit 7 homers in his first 7 or 8 games, something like that, and he's taken the league by storm. Now I don't think he's going to keep up that pace. I think that's at one point he was on pace for 129 homers or something like that. I don't think that's going to happen, but he is really good and he moves his body well, and we're going to talk about how he's able to generate enough force to hit those home runs and have that power. And he's not a big guy. He's 6'1", 180 pounds. He was a first-round draft pick out of high school, he has developed over the years. I think last season between AA and AAA, he hit 20 homers. So he's shown that he has some power, but 7 home runs in the first week is unbelievable. He did some of that in Colorado where the ball flies out a little easier. But this home run, this first one you're going to look at, is in Arizona when he's playing the Diamondbacks. And what we're going to look at today is just how he moves his body and what makes this guy successful. All right. So the first thing I want to look at is his movement forward. Okay. Now you might say, and I'm going to draw an arrow right on top of his head just so we can kind of have a frame of reference, but as he starts to go, you might say, oh, well, he's going backwards. And yeah, he is. He's loading back a little bit. And that's a good move. He's preparing his body to go forward and then go into his turn. Okay. Now, a lot of people see this, and they see this as kind of the first step. A lot of common teaching teaches you to move back kind of like he is right here, but then to really just stick that front foot out and have a toe touch. So let's see if he does that. And one more thing I want you to notice is that his back knee stays inside his back ankle as he does that rock back move. So yes, he rocks back, but he doesn't let the knee go outside of the ankle. And then from there, let's see if he reaches his toe out like a lot of people would teach, or if he moves his body forward. Okay, so I think he's going to move his body forward. So what we're going to see is that he's going to, yes, move his whole body. So right there is right when he's kind of in the ground, his front foot is firmly in the ground, and he's clearly, by the distance that arrow has traveled, he's clearly moved his center of gravity. He's moved the center of his body forward quite a bit to generate some momentum. So yes, while he rocks back at the beginning, which is a good move. Not everybody does it, but you can do it. It can be helpful, but he's definitely going to move out of that and get to a position that we call the back leg angle position, where this back leg lengthens out, especially right before he lands. This back leg is long. It means he's moved forward. You're going to notice that his back hip is still resisted. He hasn't let that thing start to turn yet because he hasn't really decided to swing yet. You're going to see that his front knee and front foot are both kind of facing the camera right now. So they're both kind of closed off. But watch what happens in the next couple of frames. You're going to see that pelvis start to turn. And as he gets in the ground, you see that front knee starts to turn out more. Okay, so he lands. His front knee is actually facing more toward the pitcher. His front foot is still a little bit closed, okay? But because his knee is open like this, it's going to be less stressful when this knee tries to go back. And you're also going to see in those same frames, watch his back knee and watch what happens as his pelvis turns. The back knee begins to turn in. So the knee turns in, and he gets this really good position where he creates a lot of separation, okay? And what I mean by separation is the lower half and the upper half being facing different directions. So if you watch the center of his belt line, it's way up the first baseline. But if you look at the center of his chest, it's still resisted back here. And because of that, his bat is still resisted because that's the tool that he's got to get going fast, right? That's what actually applies the force through the baseball. So we got to get that going fast. But we want the body to end up working somewhat like a rubber band, or like you're twisting a straw up and then letting it go. And the way he does that is by turning that pelvis right as he lands. The lower half, the pelvis very, very open here, while the shoulders and the chest stay closed. It's a huge move, and he gets to a great position here with a bent front leg and a longer back leg, okay? Now, as he goes into this turn, one thing you're going to notice on some of his home runs is that he's kind of early. So this particular one, he's pretty early on this one, and so his turn is going to be very, very good. I'm going to also draw a circle over his head or around his head just so we can track that movement there. Okay, so as he turns right here, he's doing a really good job of, continuing to rotate out of that separated position. So the hips are leading, the shoulders are following, and you're just going to notice that his head is going to move, forward just a little bit out of that circle. But the only reason for that is that he's early, okay? So if he hits the ball here, his head really doesn't move at all, but just he's one frame early on that pitch, and his head moves out of the circle. But that's okay. It's an in-game adjustment that's allowing him to be very successful. Now, one thing that's really interesting to me is that, you can clearly see his bat working up through that ball. He does a great job of keeping his bat in the way of the ball so that when he is early, he can still barrel it up and hit it way over the fence. Okay, so some people kind of get to this position and then they immediately roll their wrists kind of over toward this dugout over here, toward these Diamondbacks coaches, and that would lead to a lot of kind of rollover ground outs. But Trevor does a really good job of just letting that barrel go, almost like he's throwing the bat through the ball, up through the ball, and that's how he's able to account for his timing not being perfect and still put the barrel on it and still get a lot of force going up through the ball, and enough force to get it over the fence significantly. Now, one thing that I really like about him is if you really watch his back foot, okay, even though he's a little early, and this is rare, most guys when they're early, you'll see their back foot get stuck behind him, but when he's early, he still is able to thrust that back hip, and he still pulls the back foot forward. So you can see that. Watch his back foot. His back foot's still coming off the ground and forward. Maybe not quite as much as he would if he was on time, okay, but because he really still is using that hip and he's trying to get all his force through that ball, he is able to pull that back foot forward. So it moves even when he's early, okay? And then you watch that front leg, it goes from bent, and as he makes contact, it goes straight, and then you're going to see that it kind of bends back out in his finish. But again, some of the timing issues there, and he's probably thinking about running, but at contact somewhere around here, right before, right through, front leg straight, back foot off the ground, and then he goes and finishes his turn. Okay, so a lot of right-handed hitters struggle to finish their turn because they think about running to first, but he finishes. We see his whole last name, we see his whole number. Okay, now some of these other swings I'm going to show you have his Statcast numbers with it, so you're just going to see how far these balls actually go and how hard he's hitting them. So this one, it's a different view, but you're going to see same thing. He's moving forward, and right as he lands, right about there, maybe one more, nope, right there. Okay, you're going to see that his front foot, while it's not all the way open, it is in fair territory. Okay, so we're going to see that, pointing up the first baseline in fair territory. Okay, you're going to see his belt line turning open more than his chest. Okay, and that's that separation I was talking about. Okay, and then I want you to really key in on his back foot. So we're going to see the same thing. And this swing, he's timed up a little better. So you can see that his spine is a little more leaned back, and that's just because he's not so early. So he's making contact. His arms aren't as straight. He creates really nice space between his elbows so that there's a straight line, going from his front elbow down through his hands and down through the barrel as he makes contact and crushes that ball. Okay, and that's really important. That's one of the things I think he does best. Is actually, if you really watch his front arm goes from down to up as he turns. Okay, and that allows his hands to stay high. It allows his back shoulder to get in there. You're going to see it very clearly that this pitch isn't even that low, and his back shoulder is very clearly below his front shoulder. Okay, and that's something that a lot of coaches shy away from. But every big leaguer drops their back shoulder, especially on pitches that are middle or a little lower. High pitches they're going to drop just not as much. But his ability to keep that front elbow going from down to up for his elbows and his shoulders to work like a seesaw, where they're equal and opposite for the most part. That front arm being at the same angle as his shoulders is really, really important to allow the force to go up through the ball, both with his lower half and his upper half. If you watch that back foot, you're going to see his back foot clearly skips ahead. It clearly moves. You're going to see that force, the lower half, upper half, both going up through the ball. And let's see what these numbers are on this Statcast. So it's 108.8 miles an hour at 24 degrees off the ground, and that projects to 433 feet, which is way out of any park he ever needs to hit. Okay, so his timing was better there. His hips really thrust through. His upper body works up through because that front elbow works up, and he gets awesome results clearly right here. Okay, so let's go to this swing. And this swing is actually very, very interesting to me, this next one. Okay, and that's because this is actually a really good pitch from the pitcher. Okay, so the pitch is super inside. Okay, and if you watch the catcher, he's already set up inside, and you're going to watch his glove. Okay, so see how the catcher has to kind of reach in, and he's already set up on the inside corner. So this pitch is off the plate in, and Trevor is able to get the barrel to it, which is a really hard thing to do, especially when you're facing major league pitching. Okay, now I want you to notice something. He's really moving forward, just like we saw in that first home run swing of him. And as he goes to land, we kind of missed landing here, just as far as the frame rate of the camera, but as he goes to turn, I want you to really watch his front arm. So he does a great job of pulling that front arm up and in. Okay, so you can see that front arm went up and in, pulls his hands in to get the barrel to it. Okay, and everybody on this video talks about his hands, and I'm talking about his hands a little bit too. Okay, they're quick. To say that his elbows stay very apart, and his barrel gets to it, and he does a great job of pulling his hands in and making that adjustment to get the barrel to it. But what I want you to notice is that it's really not just his hands. He's obviously turning on this ball. Okay, so watch his hips. Obviously he's closed off to start. So as he's going, as he's just before landing, he's closed with his body, with his chest especially, and then as he sees that pitch in, he really turns as well as pulls his hands in and pulls that back foot forward. You can see that back foot moving just like in the last videos. Front leg really straightening, and he gets a really nice lean back up through his spine here, straight front leg, and he really leans back, really turns, and yeah, he pulls his hands in to get the barrel, but that's the steering wheel. The hands are the steering wheel. The arms are the steering wheel. That's all part of the control, but the turn is the engine, and that's something that I think a lot of people miss when they look at this video is that let's say he just tried to pull his hands in and he didn't try to turn. Well, he would get, even if he hit it on the barrel, it wouldn't go anywhere. And so he does a really good job of using his body, 180-pound frame. You watch his head, especially on this one where he's timed up better from the time he lands to the time he starts turning. I mean, that head is staying crazy still as he's turning through very violently. And we're going to see the hitting metrics here, and he doesn't hit this one quite as hard, but that's because his pitch is way in off the plate. 96.5 at 30 degrees. I mean, that is really, really, really impressive for that pitch, and he hits it over the fence. Okay, so we've got. I'm just going to show you kind of a still shot here, right around contact, and this is just going back to his front arm. So watch how his front arm, works from down. You can see it here. Front arm elbow is down, and then as he turns, his back elbow is going to come down. His front elbow is going to come up, and he does a very nice job of at contact, working the hands being high in the straight line coming from the front elbow down through the hands and down through the barrel to get that uphill swing, up through that ball. And you're going to see this one, similar hitting metrics, 97.8, hitting it 425 feet. So he hit that ball pretty high. So those are some of Trevor Story's first home runs in his career, and they're really impressive swings. He was hitting some high pitches, some low pitches, some inside pitches. He was a little early, showed some ability to adjust. So I think he's going to be really good. I don't think he's going to keep up the pace that he's kept so far, and it'll be really interesting to see if he'll actually be a Rocky for very long, because they do have Brendan Rodgers, he was drafted out of high school in the first. He was a top 3 pick, I believe, this past season, and he's really talented as well. So they've got some talent there, and my guess is that they'll end up trading one of them. But Trevor's definitely making it a hard case to get him out of that lineup. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this breakdown, and watch some of these Rockies games and watch him hit, and I think you're gonna like his swings, and if you really pay attention to how he uses his smaller frame, and if you're a player, I think it's a really good player to watch and try to mimic, because if you're not the biggest guy and you swing like him, maybe you're going to maximize your results better than you currently are. And if you're a coach, watch him hit and try to teach your players how he hits, because most of your players aren't going to be huge 240-pound guys. They're going to be usually more average size, kind of like Trevor Story, and he is showing you that little guys can create a lot of force when they swing well. So hope you guys have enjoyed this, and feel free to comment below if you have any questions. Thank you.